Welcome into Locked On 76ers. That right there is Keith Pompey. My name is Mark Farzetta. We got so much to get into, including a great player comparison to Ace Bailey, and also the NBA Finals are set. Is it officially the end of the super team era? We'll break it all down right here on Locked On 76ers podcast.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We do want to thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This particular episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Keith, we were kicking some things around before we hit record on this program, and you really blew my mind with this because it's something that hadn't even crossed my mind. I've just been admiring good basketball teams playing in the NBA Finals year after year, whether it's a guy I'm rooting against like Nikola Jokic at the time or whoever. But Oh my goodness gracious, it's all about the teams right now, and the Pacers and this Oklahoma City Thunder team are the perfect examples of that. So is it the official end of the super team era, the big three era, if you will, in the NBA?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say yes, it is. Because, you look at it now, and Mark, a lot of it has to do is, and when we talk about super team, I want to explain what that is to certain people. It's basically when you build a team off of three or more kind of like all-star players via a trade or free agency, right? And, the Miami Heat, everybody talks about that with Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, LeBron James. They talk about the Boston Celtics when they had Kevin Garnett. They had Paul Pierce and Ray Allen. And, the most successful one a lot of people talk about is the Golden State Warriors, where they had Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry. But now with the second apron and everything, it's hard for you to get these three types of guys, right? Get them in and keep them because they cost a lot of money. So now when you look at the Indiana Pacers, you look at the OKC Thunder, what they did is they basically did it through the draft, and they also got guys who were great fits and guys who got along and things like that. So now you look at it, it's not like you're building a super team and you got these all-stars. What you're doing is you're developing guys. You got a bunch of role players. And it's funny, since the luxury tax started in 2003, this is the first time that you have two finalists who are not luxury tax payers. So with all that being said, I have to say the era of the super team is over, and that doesn't bode well for the 76ers.
All right. Now, it's not breaking news here. I mean, you're looking at the last couple of NBA champions here. Now, again, Pacers, Thunder, either one of those. But then you're also talking about the Celtics, who built from within. You're talking about the Nuggets, who built from within. You're talking about, now look, the Warriors, you could obviously go right to Kevin Durant there. But the odd thing about them is that they were a great team before Kevin Durant. They were an NBA champion before Kevin Durant got there. The interesting thing about them is that in their 4 NBA titles here, you're talking about they win 1 without KD, win 2 with him, and then they win 1 again without him. So, yeah, super team with him there, and then he leaves. We were talking about this before the show. Brooklyn Nets try to form a super team. You have more flat Earth theories than you do championships there with the Brooklyn Nets, NBA titles, Larry O'Brien trophies. So that doesn't work out well. And you would think the Sixers would look at that and go, oh, look, it doesn't work anymore when you try to get the big three together or go out there and get the biggest free agent you could possibly get. But what do, Keith? They go out and they sign Paul George.
Yeah, when you think of that, and then in addition to that, they gave Joel Embiid an extension like a year too early, like before, you know what I mean? So yeah, they went out there and signed Paul George. And the crazy part about it is it's kind of like, are you reading the room? Because you look at the Clippers, that's not work. It didn't work out for them. I mean, you look at the Brooklyn Nets that you talked about. Oh, it didn't work out. You look at the Phoenix Suns. Man, they have the highest payroll, and look at them, right? And you go out and you get Paul George and you say, we're going to do it this way. but other teams are winning without it. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's mind-boggling when you think of that what the 76ers did, because I understand it. You know, if we're going back to 2013, right? Maybe 2019. But right about now, for them to go and go back to the future, so to speak, with all these stipulations and restrictions, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, and it really does make me think about this draft. And happy draft month, by the way, everybody. When it comes to what the Sixers should do with that number 3 overall pick, as we talked about on Friday, I don't want to see them trade that pick to acquire somebody that is a established veteran or an aging veteran or anything, and try to quadruple down on Joel Embiid or Paul George or anything like that. The only thing I'd listen to is maybe packaging with Paul George to move on from that deal. But even that is not nearly as appealing as taking a pick, taking like Ace Bailey, for instance, at number 3. But that's why I'm so interested in this draft and what the Sixers do. Because if they draft Ace Bailey, then they're thinking about building for the future, not just right now and trying to win now with what you have. Because let's face it, what you have in Joel Embiid and Paul George is still extremely difficult to move on from. But in taking a player like Ace Bailey at number 3, you're talking about really building for the future and trying to be more like a team like the Pacers. And I don't want to ignore the fact that a big trade did help put them in the spot that they're in right now, talking about Pascal Siakam. But you're also looking at the Sixers team saying, you have a young Tyrese Maxey. You have absolutely a young Jared McCain, who I think was a very pleasant surprise to even the 76ers with how good he was this year. And then you're also grouping in that number 3 overall pick. And my hope is that it's Ace Bailey. If you take a guy like that in the draft, then I think you're trying to be more like the now modern model for an NBA title contender and not the one from, say, 5-6 years ago.
Exactly. And that's why you got to get this thing right. Because, you know, we're looking at it. Yeah, you did get a Pascal Siakam who's making $42.1 million, I must say, where Paul George is making 50-something. But you look at it, you have to get it right, because then all of a sudden you have wiggle room, because these guys are going to be on their rookie deal. You know, you can bring in other players. But yeah, I mean, that's important. Like, you have to, this draft right now, getting the Ace Bailey, let's just say, you know, he can fulfill a need right now. He's still a ways away of being a great player, but that's expected of an 18-year-old. Right. But at the same time, he can be in place to whereas when Paul George goes, when Joel Embiid goes, he could be the next man up, so to speak, and be a star. So, yeah, I mean, you have to get it right. And that's something that the Sixers didn't do in the past, which led to them, okay, we got to go star hunting, even after people stop hunting at stars.
One of those words that will just live on, one of those phrases that will live on forever from Brett Brown, star hunting. Star hunting. Now, this is also, look, we're not talking about just homegrown talent here. It wasn't just Pascal Siakam. Tyrese Halliburton was also acquired via trade, but this is basically coming down to building a championship contender. And the way the Sixers have gone about it seems like it is very much out of date right now by the NBA standard. So with that being said, and I know we can do this, we can talk about this, we can do a whole show just on this question, but right now, with it being June 2nd, and the NBA draft later this month, Keith, how much are the next 3+ weeks going to dictate how much longer Daryl Morey is the general manager, head of basketball operations for the Philadelphia 76ers?
You know, that's a great question. I think that it does have a play, right? But I also think that the bigger thing is going to be this season. And what I mean by that is because right now, the way this team is currently constructed, I think the two people who are going to determine Daryl Morey's fate are going to be Joel Embiid and Paul George. Now, if Joel Embiid and Paul George go like they have seasons like they had this past one, then Daryl Morey's going to be in trouble. Now, again, if they play horribly, but then if the rookie that they have plays well, then some people may say, okay, well, we're going to go on rebuilding mode. We're just going to get rid of them. But if all three of them, if both things are going to the left, yeah, Daryl is probably cooked, right? Like, I think he's cooked. But at the same time, I do believe that because they have a veteran team and because they went this big three way, a lot is really going to hinge on what Joel does and what Paul George does.
I would absolutely agree with that. And if there's any saving grace, and we'll get to this when we come back, if there's any saving grace to Daryl Morey, it's that he has hit on two guys that look like they were going to be a big part of the 76ers organization for a long time now. And hopefully he does that again coming up in just a couple of weeks. This month, the NBA draft, Sixers, of course, with the number 3 overall pick. When we come back, speaking of that, who that pick could be, there was a very kind compliment, and you wrote about it when it came to one NBA veteran, former Sacramento King, paying a huge compliment to Ace Bailey. That's when we return. This is Locked On 76ers podcast on the Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Right now, I want to tell you about Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Well, with Monarch Money, you can help track it all. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop managing your money and start building wealth. You have surprising insights from Monarch Money. Like when I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much money I'm spending on food delivery. That can get out of hand rather quickly. Also, the all-in-one convenience of it, juggling multiple apps. Why do that? We could just use Monarch Money. And how about this? Let's just say you got engaged, you're moving with your partner, you got married, you're combining finances. Monarch Money can help you track all of that. Personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page as your significant other. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. I couldn't believe it when I read it, Keith. It was pretty amazing, and it's a great column. You got Inquirer.com. Ace Bailey, according to DeMarcus Cousins, the closest thing to Hall of Famer Tracy McGrady. Is this a piping hot take, or is he going somewhere? Is this got substance to it?
I mean, when I first heard it, I was like, right, you know what I mean? But
for the people on the podcast, Keith just ducked. Okay,
I just ducked. Yeah, I actually collapsed in my chair, like, and I had to be revived to get back up, right? But anyway, no, here's the deal. You know, at first, you know, it's one of those things where when you hear something like that, you say to yourself, like, okay, dude, you're trying to hype them up, right? Yeah. But then the more you hear these guys speak, and he's not the only one, it just seems like a lot of these former NBA players or current like all-star players, they all love Ace Bailey. Now, again, that's a lot of pressure to put on him. The one thing that I will say about Tracy McGrady, though, is like it did take him a couple years to get his groove. And then once he got his groove, you know, he became a good player. You look at their size, you look at their weight, you look at their style of play, you can see it a little bit. Now, again, that is a lot. But the fact that I'm taking DeMarcus Cousins, who played in the league, Paul George, who played in the league, a couple other guys, to me, they can decipher the difference from the college game to the NBA game, and the fact that they feel like he has a chance to be an all-star and things like that over time. You know, it kind of like says, okay, all right, now let me listen, because they played the game. They know the difference between the college game, the high school game, and the pro. And they look at him as somebody whose game is geared toward the pros. So, you know, yes, that's a lofty praise, a crazy one, some people might say. But at the same time, I guess that I have to base it off of my opinion, off of the experiences and the fact that these are guys who played in the league.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I thought about, and I always consider the source, who's saying this? Okay, well, obviously, a player had a fine NBA career, had a tendency to maybe fly off the rails every once in a while, fly off the handle every once in a while, but he wasn't the guy that was afraid. I remember him and Joel Embiid getting into it a couple of times, mostly in jest, but having fun. But he certainly was a player that could also play a little bit of a tough guy role, DeMarcus Cousins. So when I hear praise like that, about a player like Ace Bailey, directed at a player like Ace Bailey, that makes me feel even better, not just about the talent, but the attitude. Like, I don't think he's looking at Tracy McGrady. I don't think he's looking at, Ace Bailey and saying, oh, well, this guy's going to be soft. If he's giving praise to a kid like that, well, I don't think I have to worry about the mental toughness of a guy like Bailey playing in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, he's obviously familiar with it, of course, talking about a Rutgers player here. But I worry about the mental toughness of a player. I worry about whether or not they can take a Philly crowd. I worry about, first and foremost, above all else, whether or not if they come out their rookie year and realize, okay, this is a different show, this is not what I expected, I got to toughen up and all that, then I don't want them to turtle up in a corner. I want them to go out there and try to push through it. And I don't think DeMarcus Cousins is going to put this kind of praise on, an 18, 19-year-old trying to break into the NBA unless he thinks that he's got the mental toughness to play in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's what it is. But the thing is, not just DeMarcus. I mean, we're focusing on him, but it just seems like a lot of players are saying the same thing. I mean, Paul George should be the unofficial president of the fan club. It's like,
I love that line.
Talking about him. I mean, Paul George has raved over him 3 times. Carmelo Anthony, like, forget saying Tracy McGrady, he compared him to a long list of players, including himself. And I'm just like, yo, what's going on? So, yeah, like, and we're talking about, I mean, let's see, Cousins was an all-star, a perennial all-star until he was hurt. Yes, he was a tough guy, but he was a perennial all-star until he was hurt. We're talking about Carmelo, a Hall of Famer. We're talking about Paul George, a perennial all-star. So all these guys, and for the most part, besides DeMarcus, they all play the same position as this guy, Ace Bailey, and they're the ones raving. And, typically in this league, if you can't play, they're going to dish you quick, fast, in a hurry. So the fact that they're co-signing on them, it's something to pay attention to. It really is, because they're really co-signing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, when Ben Simmons came out, there was a lot of people praising him. But he was in LeBron's camp and all that. But there was just something about, I remember watching him at LSU, and although he was going to be the consensus number 1 overall pick, there was the thought of being able to get a shooter like Brandon Ingram or anything like that. The only thing that concerned me about Ben Simmons was ultimately what led to his demise, cowering from the moment and looking like he didn't want to play basketball. And I remember a game, I want to say it was Texas Tech in college when he was at LSU, and he just looked disinterested. I just remember watching that game and be like, he doesn't want to be there. And I get he's checking a box. He's got to play a year of college. But you never want to see him look disinterested. And what I've seen in Ace Bailey, I never seen him look disinterested when he was playing at Rutgers. And then hearing praise like this from the level of star he's getting it from, as you pointed out in your article, that sells me on him even more. Because they're not gonna hitch their wagon in a sense or put their opinion out there if they don't really believe it when it comes to this number 3 overall pick as he's looked at, or as DeMarcus Cousins put him, the number 1 guy, should be the number 1 guy in the draft. But yeah, I look at it as these are great endorsements that you're not getting if people think you're lazy, or people think you're not mentally tough, or people think you don't have a good work ethic either.
Yeah, I agree. And look, and that's the one thing that really messed Ben Simmons up. Now, you talked about, and so we have to figure that out with Ace Bailey, what he does. And the thing that really got me on Ben was, okay, he was scared to shoot the ball his rookie year, right? He couldn't shoot. So you're like, okay, well, here's a guy in the NBA in the offseason. What do? They work on their weaknesses. I was doing all these radio hits saying, oh, yeah, I expect him to come back a better shooter. He's going to attempt it more because guess what? That was his weakness. The fact that he didn't try it, I'm like, okay, we got a problem here. The guy wasn't working on it. So for Ace Bailey, the thing is right now, yes, everybody's basing it off of potential. But if you get in the lab and you work, and you're also, the one thing that he has that Ben Simmons didn't have is that he has veterans in the locker room who are standouts, who are going to push you. And I'm not talking about Joel Embiid. That's not his job. But I'm talking about Paul George is already the president, right, the fan club. And then you have Tyrese Maxey, who's regarded as one of the greatest guys in the league as far as personality and being a teammate. and he was a hard worker too. You don't think they're going to say, hey, come on, young boy, you're going to work out with us. So I think that he'll be in a great situation being here under these two guys.
I'll say that. Well, first off, I like the image of Paul George standing at City Hall selling Ace Bailey buttons. President of the fan club, join the fan club. You'll be on the mailing list and all that stuff. But the other aspect of it is guys like him. He comes into the league too as a guy that wants to score the basketball. I don't see him cowering in big moments. Like he wants to. He wants to create his own shot. That's his game. He can shoot. That's another thing. That's obviously a positive. And if he has a lane to go to the rim, he'll attack the basket. Like this guy wants to score the basketball. So that's one of the things I absolutely love about him. And that's, of course, one of the reasons why you're talking about him as a top 3 pick coming up in the NBA draft. The other thing that I'm just scarred for life now, Evan Turner and Ben Simmons. Whenever somebody will talk about learning to shoot, I won't have it. I won't have it. And then you'll look at the NBA Finals here, and we mentioned Pascal Siakam a minute ago. One of my biggest takeaways after the quadruple doink and having to force myself to listen to those press conferences and Nick Nurse was him talking about Pascal Siakam and him getting into the coach's office and saying, all right, what do I got to do to take steps forward? They talked about a program. Pascal Siakam got on it. Next thing you know, the kid can shoot. So if you come into the league with that kind of work ethic, that kind of dedication to scoring and improving your craft, then the sky is the limit for you. And when you hear veterans talking about Ace Bailey the way they are, it seems like this guy has everything that you need in order. If he doesn't have it now, he'll build to have it later in his career and hopefully in the not too distant future. So that's what sells me on him.
Exactly. All about that 1-2. All about the 1-2. Did you know that Pascal Siakam, he was going to school to be a priest? He didn't. You knew that? Did you know that?
I did not know that. No, I did not know that. So in Cameroon?
Yeah, in Cameroon, his father wanted him to become a priest. So he sent him to like a seminary. And then all of a sudden he didn't want to play basketball, but they had a basketball court. So he was like bored. So he would go out there and play ball. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I like it. And then he came to the United States and learned how to play. Yeah, I mean, played organized. But yeah, he was supposed to be a priest.
What is it about Cameroon and guys that are like kind of interested in basketball and not, and they just need a little bit of a kick in the butt? Like Embiid was sitting on a sofa and didn't want to play. He just wanted to play volleyball, and his dad's like, go play basketball. You'll like it. And then next thing you know, he's at Kansas. Just like that.
And I know, and that's a lot of money they're making too for not wanting to play.
For tripping into a sport? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I did not know that he wanted to join the seminary. Look, we could be talking about.
I think it's style. You know how it is. Your family's like, nah, okay, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
You're sitting in the NBA Finals, Dad. You like me now? You like me now? All right, I choose the right vocation. Anyway, coming up, an interesting stat that harkens back to the 76ers of yesteryear. That's not recently. That's a long time ago. We'll talk about this interesting stat as it surrounds the NBA Finals as well. Back after a quick one after this. Keith Pompey. Now, I referenced you as a veteran 76ers reporter, earlier in the show, but you're not this veteran. You weren't covering the team in 1977. Is that correct, sir?
Nah. No.
Well, how about this? This NBA Finals is now the second youngest NBA Finals roster to only the 1977 Blazers-Sixers NBA Final, and just a little bit younger than the 1967 Warriors-76ers NBA Finals. Going back to the shot clock era when it began in 1955, this is the second youngest NBA Finals roster to go out there. Now, in 1977, you had a 26-year-old Dr. J, a 25-year-old whippersnapper named Doug Collins, and a 22-year-old Jelly Bean Bryant coming off the bench for you. Kobe was born a year later, for reference, and Daryl Dawkins was 20 years old. Chocolate Thunder himself coming off the bench for that team. 1977. And now this Thunder Pacers NBA Final, 26.3 average years of age for their roster. How about that? The whippersnappers are back at it, friend.
It's crazy, too, because when you look at it, we're talking about Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, both being on their rookie deals. Like, you know, I mean, with another year left on it, you know, and then you're looking at these young guys for the Pacers as well. I mean, it's funny because when you talk to teams, and I remember when Brett Brown first came here, and we were talking about championship teams, and he was like, "Yeah, you know, you got to have a bunch of veterans. You know, these guys are like 29, 30, this and that." But you know what? But that's what everyone felt like at that time, you know, and you look at it, and now these two teams are just taking different approaches, and they're winning with young guys. And the crazy part about it is, you know, we talk about separate second apron and everything and all these things, these restrictions and stipulations. But when you have teams and guys are on their rookie deal, you're nowhere near getting to the second apron. So they're going to have a dynasty for a couple of years just because these dudes aren't yet going to get paid. So it's crazy when you think about it. But when you think about the guys that you mentioned, and, you know, we're talking about Doug Collins, a Hall of Famer, you know, Dr. J, one of the all-time greats, you know, Daryl Dawkins, one of the most exciting players, you know, Jelly Bean, he was before his time because he was a forward who could step out and shoot. So, you know, that just, I guess it puts it in perspective just how good these teams are nowadays, how we're going to look at them. You know what I mean? Because no one thought that the Sixers, Daryl Dawkins and them would have this type of legacy. You knew Doc would, but a lot of these other guys, you know, it was just great. And we're going to be talking about the Portland Trailblazers, you know, when they had some great players as well.
Bill Walton, I think, was 23, 24 years old. That was if I'm not mistaken, that's the year he played only 58 games and still won the MVP award.
Man, that's crazy.
But it brings me back to the Sixers because obviously we were just talking about how you build a team nowadays. You don't do the big three, you don't do the super team, whatever. You build with young talent. And I look at Jared McCain, and I reference this also when I talked about Daryl Morey and how, I mean, if he's done anything right, he's drafted really well. I mean, considering Tyrese Maxey and also considering Jared McCain, but even giving him credit for Jared McCain, before the season started last year, you listened to Nick Nurse talking about Jared McCain being a G League player, not like for the year, but up and down. We see him kind of going up and down. He comes out, plays 23 games. He's rookie of the year for those 23 games, and unfortunately got hurt. But it seemed like that almost took the Sixers by surprise, how good he was, how NBA ready he is. And I know that's also a huge question that plays in with Ace Bailey as well. How NBA ready is he? There's other NBA ready players, sure. But the Sixers seem to get a very pleasant surprise by the way Jared McCain started things out.
Yeah, they definitely did. I mean, and it was crazy because when not to piggyback off of what you said that Nick Nurse said, but if you think about it, if Paul George was not injured at the beginning of the season, we probably would not have seen Jared McCain at all, right? Mm-hmm. Because he was injured. There were other people who were struggling, you know, Eric Gordon. So then you just insert Jared McCain, and he took off. So, you know, when you look at it, it was also one of those things where, you know, I wanted Dalton Connect. Like, yo, you mean you passed up on this dude, and then you get Jared McCain, and then all of a sudden you see Jared playing, you see the confidence, you see the shooting, you see like, hey, I mean, when he was out there, he made other guys better, and it got to a point where dudes were starting to defer to him. And you're talking about he's not even a lottery pick. So yeah, when you add that, and then you talk about Tyrese Maxey, how Tyrese Maxey was able to basically become an all-star. You see guys, he's not here right now, but you got to talk about Paul Reed, who went from a second-round pick, a late second-round pick, who was the G League Rookie of the Year and MVP, right? So he has been able to make some pretty good draft picks and some pretty good moves, and that should give some fans some excitement on what they're going to do at the end of this month.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. It'll really tell you what the Sixers it'll tell you where the Sixers really think they're headed as far as the direction they want to take. Whether or not they're building for right now, whether or not they're building for the future. And look, all that being said, it's very rare that you have an opportunity here to have your best pick for right now And when you have your best pick for right now, that also means your best pick that's also a perfect fit. He's a perfect fit right now, and he also helps you build for the future, obviously. So I'm still on the Ace Bailey bandwagon, and I know you are too. We're going to, hey, obviously, 5 days a week, 76ers podcast here. I'll be with you guys and Keith Pompey as well for the ride. I'm looking forward to it, and I thank you. I think everybody, positive or negative, mostly positive, Keith. That doesn't happen on the internet, but a lot of positive comments about our first show together on Friday. So this is show number 2. I appreciate everyone that did comment, and yes, thank you to those that offered their praise of the show, and also those that offered, I'll call it constructive criticism. I thank you for it all. But make sure you guys leave a comment. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and all that good stuff. We appreciate you guys joining us again for Locked On 76ers Daily. And also for your next listen, check out Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft later this month. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Keith, until tomorrow, my friend.
Yeah, until tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. And keep it. One thing I think people are confused by, because you came from the gate and kept it real, kept it 100. And they're like, whoa. Whoa.
All right. For those that missed the first show, the first 2 minutes is just me saying, by the way, let me just bring everybody up to the speed. Process was a failure. I don't like Sixers ownership, and Joel Embiid's cooked. Basically, I just wanted to give everybody, where my state of mind is coming into the show on the 76ers. So there you go. We had the takes right out of the gate, friend.
It was refreshing. I liked it.
Thanks, man. All right. We'll be back doing this again. We'll be running it back tomorrow. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Locked On 76ers YouTube channel and all Locked On sports platforms. I also have you guys covered for your Locked On 76ers postcasts when the season starts up, just like I got you covered right now for your Locked On Phillies postcast. Until then, make sure you guys are liking and subscribing and following Keith Pompey as well for all his great articles on Inquirer.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. See ya.